of this area, and as far as I have understood, apart of course, but this is a really extremely rich and interesting conference. So my idea was more than a conclusion related with particular issues which have been dealt with these days. I would like to present some general thoughts concerning a little, maybe the whole, but in a more or less conceptual approach. So, first of all, I would like to emphasize that history is about time, space, human beings, and language. As historians, I think we should avoid the trap of presentism. Presentism is a kind of epistemological narcissism. So you tend to imagine that everybody, along for centuries, have used more or less your mental landscape, your mental instruments or tools of comprehension of the world. But this is obviously not the case, and our concepts are not timeless. Our concepts are also ephemeral and are also continuously in progress. So it's important, I think, as historians, to concentrate in this idea of being also as human beings in time. We tend to take for granted that current notions and nations, time conceptions, identities, etc., are basically the same for 3, 4, 10 centuries. This is the naturalization of our conceptual view of the world. So, as historians, we must strive to recover past meanings and frameworks and categories and try to understand the past as much as possible in its own terms. I would like to emphasize or to develop a little on language, time, space. Maybe it's 2 minutes. Well, the main idea is just, and maybe tomorrow we can discuss on this particular thing. The idea is that it's not just that space is a different concept and evolving over time, or time, etc., but there are different regimes of spatiality or regimes of territoriality, which is obvious, is present in the presentation by Professor Neumann, but also in several of the previous presentations. Is very clear that the way that an empire or a nation deal with multiple cultures, for example, or multilingualism are very different. So this is one of the important points, no? In thinking along history, tribes, towns, empires, nations are very different, and even regions, because we tend to imagine that a region is more or less a natural thing. Even the expression natural region exists, but basically a region is obviously a human creation. And even from an etymological point of view, a region is a Latin word, region, from reggae. So it's a question related with rule, related with government, and this is interesting to remind these concepts. The other point, which is very interesting for me, is the regimes of temporality, of historicity. It's not the same, but both are connected. So modern historiography, and in particular some historians interested in the general conceptual framework, are more and more historians developing a historization of time conceptions. So different authors such as Artaud, several, Rosa in Germany, etc., have developed an important theory of historical times in a more or less in the way of Koselleck's famous approach to semantics or historical semantics. No? The other point is human beings also can be categorized, can be classified in very different ways, and these categories evolve over time, and simultaneously you can classify people by social status, by ethnic background, by religion, by nationality, by etc. And all these overlapping modes of classification or regimes of categorization are also, we tend to imagine that our strong categories nowadays are more or less the same in 5-6 centuries ago, and we need to put this distance and take into account these evolving categorizations. And finally, concepts as such. I have recently written something about this, a paper about this problem. In my view, inspired by Koselleck, is the idea that in modernity we have, in the last 3 centuries, at least 2 different regimes of conceptuality, and this is very important. So enlightenment is a borderline, a turning point from an old regime of conceptuality based in modern experience, in concepts were emerging basically from experience, and on the other hand, new regime of conceptuality was created from the mid-18th century in Western Europe, when these concepts, the internal temporalization of concepts changed dramatically, and it's a kind of paradigm shift from an old regime of, because expectations took over experience, and this is, in my view, is a real big change So I would like just to finish this work by congratulating the organizers, all the attendants, for this most interesting and productive conference, rich both in presentations, language and discussions. Mulțumesc frumos!